I mean, she made it happen.
And he doesn't shy away from opinion.
And I do enjoy drinking cold beer at ballparks. So if that makes me a baseball fan, then I'm a diehard baseball fan.
It's Hacker After Dark on 1010XL.
And a very good Friday evening to you, Jacksonville. A little Hacker After Dark, before dark. In for Rick Ballou tonight here on 1010XL and 92.5 FM. We'll take you up till 8 o'clock, and we are certainly glad you are with us. I'm going to try to keep the high energy, the high momentum for the entirety of tonight's 2-hour broadcast, which I believe will be a quality 2-hour broadcast, even though, as you can relate as a sports fan, I just have the sports fan just nerves right now. I don't know how else to say it. Game 6, Detroit, Orlando. If you guys have listened to me for any amount of time, you know how much of an Orlando Magic fan I am. 16 years since the Magic got out of the first round of the NBA playoffs. You got to go back to 2010, which is very sad and very ridiculous, but it's reality. You got to go back to 2010 till the last time Orlando won a playoff series. They're up 3-2. They play Detroit tonight in Orlando. And tonight is the season, because if Orlando doesn't win tonight, yes, there will be a Game 7, but who on earth thinks Orlando is going to go into Detroit on Sunday and win a Game 7? So I think I am going to hurl. Basically, I just got the sports heebie-jeebies right now, the nerves, just everything. And the game doesn't even tip off for an hour and 10 minutes. So we'll see what happens. But I hear everybody saying, oh, this is a different Orlando team. They've been better than Detroit. Yeah, that's all fine and well for the Johnny-come-latelys. I got scar tissue with the Orlando Magic franchise. I got Nick Anderson's missed free throws from 1995. I got Derek Fisher stomping my guts out in Game 4 of the finals in 2009. I got Shaquille O'Neal saying, I'm staying, and then he goes to L.A., and just for a decade, the Magic don't recover. Basically the same thing with Dwight Howard. I got Game 7 in Cleveland 2 years ago, where the Magic had every chance to win, ultimately losing to the Cavaliers. There's just a lot of built-up scar tissue, and I just have a sinking feeling that the same old is going to happen tonight, with Detroit finding a way to win in the last 30 seconds. And that's what makes sports great, right? I mean, you know, the build-up, the anticipation. I'm certainly anticipating Orlando losing and me having a very bad Friday evening from a sports fandom point of view. But if Orlando can find a way to win the game tonight, the jubilation that you will hear in the Mandarin area in Jacksonville, Florida, will probably be resonating from my living room if Orlando can find a way to get it done this evening. So we'll talk a little NBA playoffs. By the way, really good night of NBA playoffs. Game 6, Pistons Magic. Game 6, Raptors Cavaliers. Cleveland looking to close out that series. And Game 6, Lakers Rockets. Lakers were up 3-0 in this series. Houston has won Game 4 and Game 5. Keep in mind, no NBA team has ever come back from 3-0 down in the playoffs. The Rockets have gotten it to 3-2. It's in Houston tonight for Game 6, and we will certainly talk about all of that this evening. But as you can imagine, this time of year, it's going to be a lot of National Football League conversation. It's going to be a lot of Jacksonville Jaguar conversation. Steve Palazzolo, the host of the Check the Mic podcast, he's going to join us coming up here in less than 15 minutes. We'll talk to Steve not only about his thoughts on the Jaguar draft and the Jaguar offseason. I want to do a big picture look at the AFC South and the AFC as a whole. Again, we're in the month of May now. It's starting to kind of get here. OTAs for every team. In fact, some teams, the Raiders, I know, are one. They're on the field right now. Rookie minicamp is going on out in Las Vegas. I saw Fernando Mendoza on the field there in Las Vegas. So mini camps, OTAs are beginning in the next couple of weeks. Next month, every team has a mandatory veteran mini camp. And then, of course, training camp will begin in the middle to end of July. So slowly but surely, we're getting there. Free agency is in the rearview mirror. The draft is in the rearview mirror. So beginning here tonight, in just a matter of moments, I want to kind of take stock at the AFC South and the AFC as a whole. Steve Palazzolo of the Check the Mic podcast will join me coming up in less than 15 minutes. Also, Emory Hunt. He is the owner of Football Game Plan. They had the most comprehensive draft guide out there leading into the draft, something like 1,500 scouting reports. So every guy the Jaguars drafted, all 10 of them, and every undrafted free agent the Jaguars brought in, all, I believe, 18 of them, 28 total, are in the Football Game Plan draft guide. Emory Hunt puts that thing together, and we're going to talk about what the Jaguars did in the draft. We're going to talk consensus boards and all that. That happens towards the top of the 7 o'clock hour. Jacksonville, we're glad you're with us heading into a big sports weekend right here on Hacker After Dark. Every night on HAD, we do kick it off with a big deal of the night. And Aaron Williams, let's do that right now.
Time now for the big deal of the night.
What's the big deal?
What is the big deal?
No, because it is a big deal.
On Hacker After Dark.
So last night, about 24 hours ago, as a matter of fact, I sat in this very chair and we kind of took stock of where the Jacksonville Jaguars are as a roster from where they were when the season ended about 109 days ago, right? When they walked off the field after losing that game to the Buffalo Bills. And that was a Jaguar roster point of view. Now I want to look around a little bit. I want to look inside the division, and I want to look big picture in the AFC. When you think about the off seasons in Tennessee, in Indianapolis, and in Houston, well, it's a different story in every city. Let's begin with the Titans. The Titans had a ton of money to spend in free agency. They were way under the cap. They almost had to spend a bunch of money. And they did. They brought in one of the best slot corners in the league, and Alontae Taylor from New Orleans. They went out and got a wide receiver in Wan'Dale Robinson, who was a 1,000-yard guy in New York. They went and got Franklin Myers on the defensive line from Denver. They traded for former Seminole Jermaine Johnson from the New York Jets. They brought in Carnell Tate, the first-round pick, 4th overall, out of Ohio State. The Titans, to their credit, did a lot. They were awful last year, right? They were lucky to win 4 games. They were bad. And they fire their coach, they blow out the staff, and they bring in Robert Saleh, right? Our friend here in Jacksonville, Robert Saleh. And they also bring in Brian Daboll as the offensive coordinator. Look, I think Tennessee has gotten better, but I do think that's relative because they were awful last year. I mean, better would be winning 7 games this year, which I think is realistic for the Titans. Do I think they're going to compete in the AFC South? No, I don't think they're going to do that. And look, we've seen when teams sign a boatload of free agents, it can go south pretty quick. Now, sometimes it works, but I would argue more times than not, it probably doesn't work. It'll be interesting to see because the Titans, I believe if you include the draft and free agency, I mean, it's a ridiculous number. They brought in like 30 new guys. They literally signed like close to 20 free agents, and they had 8 draft picks. I mean, it is a made-over roster. Again, I think Tennessee's better, but I do believe that's relative because I still think they're going to be probably 4th, maybe 3rd in the division. That brings me to Indianapolis. I hate the Colts offseason. And I know our resident Colt fan in the building, Trent, who's probably driving home listening right now, is saying hacker this and hacker that, and that's fine. But I hate what Indianapolis did this offseason. Paying Alec Pierce what they paid him, $29 million a year. I know he was going to get paid by somebody. That guy caught like 47 passes last year. He's a deep threat. I get it. But you let Michael Pittman Jr. go. You trade him for a can of Spam and some granola bars, right? Which is basically all they got from Pittsburgh. To Pittsburgh's credit, they got a great player to me in Mike Pittman Jr. You bring in Alec Pierce, you give him a ton of money. I don't know. I didn't like that. They trade Zaire Franklin. They lose Braden Smith, one of their best offensive linemen in free agency. Of course, Sauce Gardner cost them 2 first-round picks. So they're not going to have a first-round pick either in 2027. And then they gave Daniel Jones pretty decent money, a guy who blew out his Achilles on December 7th here in Jacksonville. Is he going to be ready for September? 9 months after the Achilles, is he going to be ready to go on opening day? For as much as I kind of like what Tennessee did, I hate Indianapolis's offseason. I could be wrong, but to me, there are serious questions at quarterback. Jonathan Taylor's a good player. Tyler Warren's a good player. Alec Pierce is decent, but he's not worth $29 million per. And then defensively, I don't know. We'll see. Kenny Moore's probably on the way out. Like I said, Franklin's gone. I'm just not a fan of what the Colts have done. Houston, I'm a fan of what they have done to an extent. I like David Montgomery. Joe Mixon's obviously gone. Nick Chubb's gone. They bring in David Montgomery. Good player. Is he what he was 2 or 3 years ago? I don't know. He's 28, 29. We'll see what kind of David Montgomery they get. I believe he's entering year 8 in the National Football League. The thing about the Texans, though, again, outside of Nico Collins, do they have anybody that scares you on their offense? Does David Montgomery scare you? Does Dalton Schultz scare you? Does any of those young receivers they have outside of Nico Collins scare you? I mean, they get Tank Dell back, presumably. Remember, he missed all of last year, but his knee basically exploded in December of 2024. Will he be the same player when he comes back after not playing the entirety of 2025? And as always, we know the Texans' defense is going to be phenomenal. How will C.J. Stroud perform? Well, it's going to come down to the offensive line. I like some of the things the Texans have done in the offensive line. I thought getting Wyatt Teller from Cleveland was a really good acquisition. Again, some positive, some negative, but in totality, I think Houston's going to be largely the same. Incredible defense. Do they have enough on offense outside of Nico Collins? Nico Collins is a stud, but is he all they have on the offensive side of the ball? And then that quickly brings me to the AFC as a whole. And this is the one concern I have from a Jaguar point of view. You think about who Jacksonville was competing with pretty much a majority of the season last year for seeding in the AFC. Think about the better teams, right? It was New England, obviously. It was Denver. It was Buffalo. It was Houston. It was the Chargers. And every one of those teams was the 1 seed 1 week and the 2 seed the next week and the 3 seed after that. And they were all battling at the top of the division or the conference. Well, let's look at what those teams did. Every one of those teams, you could argue, added playmakers. Denver gets Jalen Waddle, which is an unbelievable get for them for Bo Nix and that offense. Buffalo went out and got DJ Moore. Now, DJ Moore, is he going to be the receiver he was 2 or 3 years ago? I don't know, but in Buffalo's instance, getting a guy like DJ Moore is going to help that offense. I didn't even mention Kansas City. They're going to be back in it because Mahomes will be healthy. Kelsey's back. And, oh, by the way, they just added the Super Bowl MVP in Kenneth Walker, which is a pretty good get. Houston, we just talked about adding David Montgomery. New England hasn't added anybody yet, but are they going to ultimately wind up with A.J. Brown after June 1st? And we just mentioned, the Chargers. Not to say they got playmakers back, but you know what they did get back are their 2 starting tackles. Remember, the Chargers were without basically their 2 starting tackles for 90% of the year last year. Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater both missed massive time with injury. Both are going to obviously be back in 2026. So every team the Jaguars competed with in the AFC last year added a playmaker or is going to get somebody back from injury. Jacksonville lost one of their playmakers in ETN. Now, you could argue they get Travis Hunter back. How will that factor into the offense? They get a full year of Jacoby Myers, a full year of Parker Washington. Hopefully you get BTJ back to the player he was his rookie year. But there's no doubt that of all the contenders in the AFC last year, assuming New England lands A.J. Brown, which indications are that's going to happen at some point, or that rumor is at least out there and has been out there for quite some time. If that ultimately comes to fruition, you're talking A.J. Brown, DJ Moore, Kenneth Walker, Jalen Waddle, David Montgomery, all in the AFC, all going to the teams that Jacksonville was competing with for seeding last year. So that is a concern. I say all of that to say this. I don't know where Jacksonville stacks up in the AFC. I'll need a little more time to comprehend that. But when it comes to the division, the AFC South, and we're going to talk about this with Steve Palazzolo, the host of the Check the Mic podcast. He's going to join us here coming up in less than 10 minutes. Again, Tennessee's better. I still don't think they're going to be an above 500 team. Indianapolis, they have a culture of winning 7, 8, 9 games, always being in the mix, and then dropping the ball just before the playoffs get here. I don't know if it gets to that point this year. Again, I am not a fan of what the Colts did. And people say, well, they were really good before Daniel Jones got hurt. That's not necessarily true. They had lost 2 games in a row before coming to Jacksonville, and Daniel Jones had started looking like Daniel Jones. And then he comes here, blows out the Achilles, they lose their 3rd game in a row, and they never recovered. They had to go get Phillip Rivers off the couch at age 45 or whatever he was. I still think the division is Houston, Jacksonville. Jacksonville, Houston. That is going to be the battle. I think nationally, Houston's going to get love because of David Montgomery and because of Jacksonville losing ETN and losing Devin Lloyd, which is fine. No one picked Jacksonville to win the division going into the year last year anyway. But if it's me on May 1st, and again, obviously subject to change, and maybe I'm going to have my Homer glasses on here. I got Jacksonville 1. I got Houston 2. Man, I really am sour on what Indy did. I'm going to say Tennessee 3 and Indy 4. Now, could that change come training camp? Yeah, probably. And we'll probably do this exercise again in a couple of weeks or months, certainly, leading up to the year. But a lot of change in the AFC South with player personnel. The rosters are going to look different. But in the end, I think it's going to be pretty similar to what happened towards the end of last year. You got Houston and Jacksonville, Jacksonville and Houston battling for the top. And you got Indianapolis and Tennessee, in whatever order you want to put them in, battling to stay afloat for that 3rd spot in the AFC South division. Let's talk Jaguars. Let's talk Jaguar offseason. And let's talk Jaguar draft and AFC South with Steve Palazzolo. He is the host of the Check the Mic podcast, and he joins us next on a Friday evening here in Northeast Florida. A little Hacker After Dark before dark. In for Rick Ballou till 8 o'clock. Jacksonville, we're glad you're with us. It's 1010XL and 92.5 FM.
Some people think he's Italian.
Passati fare a me.
Maybe he is.
I take everything.
Fat Tony on Jaguars Today with Mike Dempsey.
I disci umani vuiavuci a parlare con Fanucci.
Weekdays from 10 to noon on 1010XL.
At the First Coast YMCA, you'll find much more than just a gym. We offer many ways to help you become more active, reach your weight loss goals, and find your inner strength. Membership at the Y includes state-of-the-art facilities, a huge variety of fitness classes, and programs for all ages. It's easy to join the Y since it's affordable for all incomes. The Y is a great place to make connections and experience something new. Visit the YMCA near you or online at fcymca.org.
Jimerson Burr is a full-service, Florida-based commercial law firm that has experience and capabilities to handle any legal issue a business is confronted with. Learn more about what they can do for you at jimersonfirm.com.
you know that an annual coating inspection can extend the life of your building by years? Catching early signs like hairline cracks, fading, and moisture intrusion helps prevent costly repairs down the road and keeps your property looking its best. Our team at Performance Painting helps you stay ahead of maintenance with professional inspections and long-lasting coating solutions. Protect your building, protect your budget. Go to performance-painting.com to schedule a free inspection. Performance Painting, repair, protect, preserve.
Performance painting. Life happens every day, and sometimes it gets in the way. That's why 1010XL makes it easy to listen to your favorites. If you missed it, get it on demand.
At 1010XL.com.
Channeled by Duck Duck Rooter Plumbing, Septic and Air Conditioning.
Hi, I'm Sean Monahan from Monahan Jewelers in Atlantic Beach. Since 1977, we've been Jacksonville's local family jeweler, and this Mother's Day, we'd like to help you celebrate Mom with up to 40% off our entire inventory. GIA-certified natural diamonds and lab-grown diamonds, beautiful colored gemstones, designer brands, custom jewelry design, and Monahan Jewelers offers interest-free financing on any purchase, so get something special with a payment you can afford. Come celebrate Mom with fine jewelry at up to 40% off at Monahan Jewelers in Atlantic Beach.
I'm here with Danny Van Sickle, Director of the Electrical Training Alliance. Danny, tell me about your program.
Hey, Rick. We're a 4-year electrical apprenticeship. Our students start out making over $40,000 a year and right now make over $90,000 a year, including benefits. There is no tuition or student debt. You just have to apply and get accepted.
Did you say no tuition and no student debt?
You heard that right, Rick. Once you're accepted to the program, your only cost for the books and the course fees. About $800 a year.
That sounds like an amazing opportunity. How can I learn more?
Just go to etajax.org and you can apply there.
Apply by May 14th.
This is Victor Patel, CEO of North Florida Medical Center. Have you been in an auto accident? Are you feeling pain or stiffness? Our board-certified team has over 15 years experience helping patients recover through chiropractic care, physical therapy, pain management, primary care, and neurology. Even minor injuries can cause long-term problems if left untreated. Schedule your free consultation today at nfmcjax.com. North Florida Medical Center, bringing the care back to healthcare.
Bueller.
Stay cooler with Bueller.
Hey, pal, what's the matter? I came right over.
It's my water, Jason. Smell this.
Yeesh.
That came out of my tab, Jason. I'm worried there's a lot more in there than just H and 2 and O.
Well, yeah. In Jacksonville, we have some of the hardest water in Florida. There's calcium carbonate in there and magnesium sulfate and...
I'm sorry, calcium... what now?
It's the same stuff that makes those cool stalactites in caves.
Well, it's making my shower all powdery, my tab's all crusty, and caves make me claustrophobic.
Put on these sunglasses. Whoa. Call Bueller Air and Plumbing. And our water treatment experts will do a free water quality test. We'll check for minerals, bacteria, anything that might make your water smelly or damage your plumbing or appliances.
And if it's bad, you can fix it?
Your glasses will come out cleaner, your shampoo will lather better.
I like a good lather, Jason.
Stay cooler with Bueller.
Visit BuellerAir.com.
Free Comic Book Day is going nuclear this Saturday, and Gotham City Limit is blowing up. Meet legendary artist Aaron Bartling, score massive sales, grab free comics, and soak in the good vibes of the hobby. Follow us on all socials and take Free Comic Book Day to the limit.
1010XL, presented by Farrah and Farrah, exclusive injury law firm of the Jacksonville Jaguars. When it's game time, Farrah doesn't flinch. Here's another call on the 1010XL hotline, driven by Key Buick GMC, home of the lifetime powertrain warranty.
Back here on 1010XL and 92.5 FM in the city of Jacksonville, your home for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we are glad you are with us. Well, needless to say, it was an interesting NFL draft for the Jacksonville Jaguars from a national point of view. I've heard the term consensus boards more in this week than I think I have in my entire life. Let's talk about the Jaguar draft. Let's talk about the Jaguar offseason. And let's talk about where the Jaguars are in the AFC South as OTAs, believe it or not, begin in less than 3 weeks. Steve Palazzolo is the host of the Check the Mic podcast, and he's always kind enough to join us here on 1010XL. Steve, hope your offseason's going well, man. How are you?
Doing great. Appreciate you having me back.
Hey, man, we always appreciate the time. All right, you and I haven't spoke since the Jaguars the week after they were eliminated from Buffalo, and needless to say, a ton has gone on. We'll talk free agency, we'll talk the draft, but kind of a mile-high view, Steve. How would you assess the Jaguar offseason in totality?
I think it's been fine. I mean, I don't think there's been a ton of splash moves, but it's a lot of, keeping some of their pieces together and, coming off of a pretty good season, having, the offensive line intact, the playmakers intact, just talking about Travis Hunter, which people, of course, are overreacting to. Oh, he's going to play corner and never take a wide receiver snap. Nope, that's not what they said. But, coming off of a good season where I think they've shown they've got maybe better depth than we thought, keeping a lot of it intact, I think has been solid. And, of course, we got the draft to discuss, which was quite the hot button issue. So I'll try to bring a nuanced view to the Jags draft, the reaction to it, and maybe what they were thinking here.
Yeah, I watched you and Sam, and I thought you guys on Check the Mic did a good job of kind of analyzing what the Jaguars did and not just completely freaking out like a lot of your colleagues on a national basis. Obviously, the consensus board was a big topic. I mean, what did you make of what James Gladstone and the Jaguars did during the draft?
Well, the first thing that I think is interesting is what people need to realize. It's his second draft in name, and it's his first full draft with the full system in place, right? Because he came in pretty late. I mean, any GM who comes in, whether it's Ian Cunningham in Atlanta right now, if you come in, in January or February, it's late in the process. This was the first year James and his staff got to say, okay, we have a whole year to evaluate this draft class. Let's put our processes in place. Let's put our data in place. Let's put our scouting strategies in place, and let's go. So I think that's the first thing that's interesting here is that this is like the first time you get into, his mind in their process. Then you've got the fact that they didn't have a first round pick. And most of the time, when you get into draft grades and reactions, if you don't have a first round pick, it's hard to have good public perception because you don't have any of these big names, so I think that's the first thing to just start with. Secondly, the fact that they drafted in volume, I think is always a good thing, right? The part of the reason why the consensus board is even a hot button issue is because people have evaluated it and said, look, I know scouts say, I want to trust my process, but it's all probabilistic, right? It's all a percentage chance that you're going to hit. So the couple ways that you mitigate that is you look at the general consensus and you look at maybe where players are supposed to be drafted, because if you have massive reaches, the hit rates are generally lower. That's one way to mitigate it, is you just make sure you draft players in and around where they're supposed to be. And then the other one is with volume. And I think that was always a big part of the Rams strategy. So most draft analysis the day after is, did you get the players that I liked, right? I like this guy, therefore it's good. I don't like this guy, therefore it's bad. But the ways that you mitigate your misses and your uncertainty is to, draft 10 times. And, you also want to draft players in and around where they're going to be drafted. So the Jags did, one of those things, which was draft in volume. And that was one of the strategies that worked really well for the Rams in all those years with no first rounders. They hit on so many day 3 picks that they brought in more value than any other team by my numbers over the last 10 years, despite only having, one first round pick before Ty Simpson during that time. So that's part of the strategy, was the high volume selections from the Jags.
Steve Palazzolo, Check the Mic podcast with us here on 1010XL in Jacksonville. Not to say the national media hasn't ever been over the top on their assessment of the Jaguars, Steve. You and I have talked about that in the past. But do you think they were, again, a little over the top? Well, I saw some scathing criticism from some people.
Yeah, what I don't like is if you disagree, like I've got some criticisms of some of the picks or the draft or what have you, but there's a way to criticize or at least give the negative angle or what you disagree with without using the word arrogant or cocky or confident. It's like, no one's out there trying to be like, oh, I'm going to outsmart everybody. Everyone's trying to win. Everyone's got I've worked with every NFL team, through the years here. There's 32 different business models. They all have 32 different ways to win and strategies. And even with James having his Rams roots, he didn't just say, well, I'm going to do exactly what Les Snead did. He's going to do what he's going to do. And he's going to work with Tony. And he's going to work with the whole crew there. And so there's 32 different ways of doing business, which makes this fun, right? Like Mickey Loomis and the Saints, they've been doing their own thing for years. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Les and the Rams, they've been doing their own thing for years, and it's worked more often than not. Doesn't mean they're perfect, right? So that is part of the fun of this, is everybody's going to have slightly different strategies. And if you heard the clip of Eric DeCosta, I mean, part of we can get into the consensus board stuff in a sec, but my whole thing is, it's not arrogance to just have your style and system. It's not arrogant to take Albert Regis at pick 81 It's just that's what you thought. That was your conviction, and you go with it. And we'll see. There's so much of we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, this will be a fun one to just see how it plays out.
To me, the interesting thing, they drafted 10 guys, as you mentioned. None of those 10 are going to start, barring injuries. I mean, the roster, they lost Devin Lloyd and ETN, certainly two big losses, but every other starter from last year's team is back, and you bring in these 10 rookies. What was your thought on the first two picks, the guys out of A&M, Borkashire and Regis?
Well, I mean, the reason why they got some heat is because they were drafted higher than expectation. And again, we could get into the details of why that matters or why anyone should care. Borkashire he's a fun player, though. I mean, when you watch him, 5-year player, I think he catches the ball really well. He's really smooth. I thought he was going to be a bigger part of A&M's offense, especially early in the season. He's got this monster game-winning catch against Notre Dame, and they just didn't target him a ton, and the quarterback play was inconsistent. So that's why when you see the inconsistency or the lack of production and this theoretical upside type of player, hey, if we target him more, he's pretty smooth, big-bodied pass catcher. That felt like more of a fourth-round type of pick. So that's going to be the question. You get him at 56. I also have more philosophical questions about taking, say, a wide tight end or a guy that you just need to have as a blocking tight end, say in the top 60. I just went into that on my show today. It's not even so much the pick. It's more, do you need to have – if you go into the draft and say, man, we got to have 4 tight ends so that we can run what Liam Cohen wants to do, is that actually the best strategy? And I think that's as fair of a question. Do you need to get a tight end on day 2 in the top 60 picks? And if you, rather than maybe taking some of the other better players, perceived better players that were on the board. And then same thing with Regis at 81, right? A guy that's probably expected to go on day 3. You get him there. He's got some, his playmaker in the run game. I don't think he's great at anchoring, against double teams at the point of attack, but I get it. He's moves well up and down the line of scrimmage, got some violent hands. So look, from a scouting perspective, you could say, man, really like both of these players. But again, it comes down to, did you take them at points when they should have come off the board, or did you take them a round or 2 early? And could you have still gotten them later? I think those are all fair questions with those picks.
Couple more for Steve Palazzolo of the Check the Mike podcast. The funny thing, they get Pregnon out of Oregon at 88, and I've heard people say, well, if you took him at 56 and you took Borkashire at 88, it doesn't look as bad. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, they're the same guys. It'd be the same draft class. How does that make any sense? But obviously, it appears that they maybe got a steal with Pregnon at 88.
Yeah, look, there was talked about him going, in the 40s, maybe sneaking into round 1. He's a little on the older side. I think late production breakout at Oregon and, across 3 different schools, but he's got good size, moves well enough, got some power. I think he's solid across the board, and I think he's got a chance to compete for snaps right away. So I think that ends up being a pretty decent pick. And so that was, when you get into the consensus board studies, we're just trying to use the past to predict the future. In the past, when you grab somebody, 50 slots higher, 100 slots higher than that board, it generally doesn't tend to be great. And then the ones that tend to fall, it actually also doesn't tend to be great at that point, because the NFL knew something, or there was something character-wise, or there was something injury-wise, or maybe it was just off as far as the valuation goes. So we'll see how it plays out, but certainly a perceived steal at this point to get Pregnon.
I want to ask you about the AFC South in a moment, but the consensus boards, and maybe I was just naive or blind to this, but I've been doing this a while, and I can't ever remember talking about consensus boards during draft season, certainly not 3, 4, 5 years ago. Is this a relatively new thing that people are flocking to?
Yeah, it's the last 5 years or so that this has become a thing. And here's the way I look at it. We were all trained to evaluate the draft almost the way Mel Kiper did when you'd watch the draft, and all of his analysis was through the lens of his board, right? A pick was good if he liked him. He was bad if he didn't like the guy, right? That was, and we were all kind of trained to do that. And then within NFL teams, of course, they're going to have their boards and their own opinions and have conviction behind them, right? We care about what we do. And so the consensus board was basically, it's the Mel Kiper way of looking at it, but just through, say, 150 boards or 200 boards. And it's not, and it only matters because people have done studies on it and there's some statistical signal there. That's the thing, right? That's the only reason why it matters. So the people that accumulate these things say, look, does this matter? Is this actually a good gauge of value because it's like going into free agency and saying, hey, I think this guy's worth 20 million, but if the rest of the league thinks he's worth 10 million, then you're going to overpay and you don't want to pay that guy 20 million. Does the consensus board actually have some signal? And historically it has. It went at extreme reaches, at extreme ends. And now again, it doesn't mean you just go in order and always take the players. It's just that we've learned that it's a decent gauge of market value for a player. And then internally for teams use this. They use this when they do mock drafts. We heard Eric DaCosta talking about it, and he made the point that Sam and I have made on our show a lot. It felt like the league over the last 4 years or so has really started to converge and draft in a similar manner relative to the consensus. And his theory, I think, is the correct one. There's more data than ever. PFF data has over a decade now of rich college data. There's workout data, that in-game athleticism. So teams have more data, and they may have converged a little bit closer to this consensus in recent years. This was the first draft in a while that I can remember teams like the Jags, the Texans, the 49ers maybe going a little bit off what the consensus is, which is fine. We'll see how it all plays out. But that's why I think it became a bigger deal. The league had started to become homogenized, say, for a few years, getting a little bit closer to the consensus, so to speak. And this was the first year in a while a few teams started to maybe revert back and do things their way. Could have been the strength of the draft, could have just been what they wanted to do. The fact that the Texans and Jags both have most of their starters intact. And so they're looking for depth pieces and backup tight ends or whatever they're looking for. So there's a lot of reasons why I think we landed where we were here. But the point is, it's not about who makes up the consensus. It's that historically there's been statistical signal there. It's been a decent gauge of, hey, if you go off the rails too far, it hasn't worked out. Doesn't mean it can't. It just hasn't, from a hit rate perspective historically.
And it's a great point. It's not just the Jaguars, as you mentioned, Houston and San Francisco also being lumped into not following the consensus board. And, what do the 49ers, Texans, and Jaguars all have in common? They all were very good last year and were in the NFL playoffs. So we'll see what ultimately does happen. Final moment, Steve Palazzolo, Check the Mic podcast. Steve, in the time we have left, give me a quick thought on the division. Obviously, a lot of goings, a lot of comings, a new head coach in Robert Saleh. What have you made of the AFC South this offseason?
I mean, first off, I think the Texans are in really good shape again. I think they've done just a really nice job building that roster. I love their Caden McDonald pick at defensive tackle, adding a different body type, a different style to what they have here. I think they're going to have a fierce defense once again, and they've added a ton of depth on their offensive line. The funny thing about all this draft discussion is if the quarterback still holds so much weight, it doesn't matter who wins and loses the draft. If the quarterback plays like C.J. Stroud did in the playoffs and implodes, it won't matter. But I think Houston's in really good shape. They just have to get C.J. Stroud back on track. I think the Titans are moving in the right direction. It's a slow burn because they're coming from just a poor position from a roster perspective. No impact players. I liked what they did with Carnell Tate at 4. I know that raised some eyebrows, but it didn't for me. I thought that was the right move to get a playmaker for Cam Ward. So again, I think Tennessee with Robert Saleh maybe elevating that defense a bit. I think they're moving in the right direction. And then the Colts are an interesting one because, they gave up the 2 1s. I think they still had a solid draft. I think they're really going to be kicking themselves next year, though, not having that first-round pick that they gave up for Sauce Gardner. Next year's top 15 players. I mean, there might be 15 players in the draft next year that would have gone number 2 this year. It's crazy how deep next year's draft is. We'll see how it plays out. But in the short term, I think the Colts, took a little hit in wide receiver depth. I think, my description of the Ballard era has just been solid. Use the word solid a million times. It's a mid-tier, solid roster. And if they get great play out of Daniel Jones, again, they can compete, but they seem like the same type of team they've been the last few years, added some depth in this draft despite not having their first rounder.
Again, OTAs for a lot of these teams begin in a couple of weeks. Minicamp will be in the middle portion of June. Steve, tell the good folks here in Jacksonville to Check the Mic podcast, what you and Sam will have coming out in the coming days.
Yeah, we have all of our draft coverage. We've gone team by team, division by division, had some guests on today. So Check the Mic on YouTube. And then off-season time, we have some fun off-season content. We'll look at the team's best off-seasons, roster breakdowns. We still try to talk NFL as much as we can, even through May, June, and July heading up to training camp.
He's one of our favorites, Steve Palazzolo of the Check the Mic podcast. Steve, thank you for the time. We'll talk again soon, pal.
Yep, you got it. Thank you.
Live streaming from the XL Digital Studios. Brightened by Harbor Dental Care, Jacksonville's first choice for dental emergencies.
Baloo here for Smoonez Vision. Why Smoonez Vision? Well, I've been with Dr. Neil Smoonez now since I got back to Jacksonville in 2006. 37 years of experience he has. Smoonez Vision is a family organization that focuses on personal high-quality medical and surgical eye care. Dr. Catherine Smoonez is fellowship trained in cornea and cataract surgery and all refractive surgery. Combined, that's 30 years plus in laser eye surgery. Visit SmoonezVision.com today. Here you can see.
Hey, I've got that craving again. How about some Mr. Chubby's wings?
Have you had the Chubby style wings? Grilled to perfection with Chubby's secret seasoning.
You know I have. They are so delicious. I swear you can't find anywhere in town with better wings and better prices on drinks.
So many different specials each night, too. Well, I'm ready to chub it up again.
Me too.
See all their specials at MrChubby'sWings.com. Locations on Fleming Island, the West Side, and Ponte Vedra Beach. Mr. Chubby's Wings. Before the game, after the game, and during the game.
Attention poker players, the tables are heating up at all Best Bet locations. Don't miss a minute of the action with $800 high hands every Friday and Saturday, $555 Cinco de Mayo high hands every 20 minutes, and the Memorial Day $30,000 cash giveaway. And don't forget to earn those entries to win a side-by-side all-terrain vehicle starting May 1st in Best Bet St. Augustine. Get to your location of choice, Jacksonville, Orange Park, or St. Augustine, and take home your winnings. For all the details, visit bestbetjacks.com.
Which team holds the record for the most NCAA men's basketball championships?
For over 20 years, Southern Oak Insurance has given Floridians a better alternative to their current homeowners policy. See what you can get with Southern Oak. Log on to southernoak.com.
Our family protecting yours. Southern Oak Insurance.
UCLA holds the record for most men's NCAA basketball championships with 11. Kentucky is next with 8.
Southern Oak Insurance. Our family protecting yours.
Flowers and cards are great for Mother's Day, but why not make this Mother's Day extra special with something timeless from Beard's Diamonds? The team at Beard's has put together an amazing collection of affordable and distinctive gifts, up to 40% off. Beautiful bracelets with diamonds and colored gemstones, stunning pendants, and gorgeous earrings featuring both natural and lab-grown diamonds. Think about it. It's the gift she'll be able to enjoy for years, even decades. Always a reminder of that special Mother's Day in 2026. Rings, bands, pearls, fashion pieces, all the latest from the world's top designers. Beard's makes it easy to show the mother in your life how much she means to you and to the whole family. And with up to 40% savings, you'll be amazed at what you can do with your budget. Get the card and the flowers, but top it off with a spectacular piece of jewelry from Beard's. Beard's Diamonds, not another chain store owned by Wall Street. Your local jeweler. Family owned and operated for nearly 45 years. Beard's Diamonds in the St. John's Town Center.
Hey, so why do we tee off? Tee it high and let it fly.
He's got a beautiful backswing.
Oh, he got all of that one. Tour news, local updates, and the latest gear. Cut a few strokes off your game Saturday mornings at 10 with the Edwin Watts Golf Hour on 1010XL.
Feel the power. Hear the legend. One Night of Queen, performed by Gary Mullen and the Works. The look, the sound, the electrifying showmanship of one of rock's greatest bands. One Night of Queen, April 29th at Florida Theater. Get your tickets now at floridatheater.com.
Have you got concrete or asphalt rubble piling up? Arcosa Crushed Concrete will pay you for it and recycle it. They're just minutes from Everbank Stadium on Talleyrand. Call Arcosa Crushed Concrete and get paid for what you don't need. ArcosaCrushedConcrete.com.
1010XL, presented by Farah and Farah, exclusive injury law firm of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Focused, fueled, fearless, Farah. This is Hacker After Dark on 1010XL.
Yes, it is. A little Hacker After Dark, Before Dark on this Friday. And for Rick Ballou until 8 o'clock. Glad you're with us. 1010XL, 92.5 FM. Thank you to my buddy Steve Palazzolo of the Check the Mic podcast for joining us this evening. More Jaguar talk coming up in about 20 minutes or so. Emory Hunt, the owner of Football Game Plan. You also see him at CBS Sports HQ. I think Emory probably has the most comprehensive pre-draft guide out there. 1,500 scouting reports is what he put out. So he had a scouting report on all 10 Jaguar draft picks, and for that matter, on the other 18 undrafted free agents the Jaguars signed. So we'll do a deep dive into the Jaguar draft with Emory Hunt of Football Game Plan. That comes up in about 20 minutes. You know, I did the Gator Bites podcast earlier today with Patrick Young, former Gator great on the basketball floor. You can, of course, hear that on all the 1010XL social media platforms. We do it every Friday morning. 1010XL, Twitter/X, YouTube, Facebook, etc. And we got into a conversation today. Well, really started because in the NFL draft, the Florida Gators had 7 guys drafted. I believe 1 per round, as a matter of fact. 7 guys drafted, and that doesn't take into account the undrafted free agents. I know J. Michael Sturdivant, a couple others were signed as undrafted free agents. And that doesn't take into account the guys that left in the transfer portal that are still in college and the guys that came back to Florida, like Jaden Baugh and Miles Graham and Jaden Woods and Bryce Thornton and all of these guys. And I say all that to say this. There was obviously talent on that Gator football team last year to have 7 guys drafted into the NFL. Austin Barbers and Jake Slaughters and George Gums and Caleb Banks and all these guys. And despite that many draft picks and despite the amount of talent that was on that roster, the Gators still managed to win 4 games. It was ridiculously putrid. We know Billy Napier got fired and John Sumrall has come in and the rest is history. And we talked last night about John Sumrall and the job he has done not only in the portal, not only in retaining talent from last year, not only what he's doing in recruiting. Florida currently is a top 10 team in recruiting, but he's generated excitement around the football program again. Over 40,000 people in the Swamp for the spring game. People are talking about Gator football again. People seem to be excited and intrigued at what John Sumrall is doing. And that conversation will continue. But I got thinking after the Gator Bites podcast and prior to Hacker After Dark that I was going to bring this to the table and just get your thoughts on it, Gator fans. It's really twofold. It's DJ Lagway is part of this, and Billy Napier is the other part. Let's begin with Napier. You know, when Will Muschamp got fired from the University of Florida, even though he ultimately ended up in the conference as the head coach of South Carolina, there was part of me that was still rooting for Will Muschamp. I liked Will Muschamp. It's unfortunate it did not work out at Florida for Will Muschamp. And I believe many people around the program then, and probably still around the program today, will tell you that they really thought and hoped it would work out for Will Muschamp. Ultimately, it didn't, and he was fired, and he probably should have been fired, you know, looking back at it. But it's disappointing that a guy like Will did not work out at a place like Florida. And by the way, Will Muschamp, I believe, now the defensive coordinator at Texas? Hey, if they're not playing the Gators, I'll probably be rooting for Will Muschamp. I have no trepidation saying that. On the exact opposite spectrum of that is Jim McElwain. Jim McElwain, that was weird. That was bizarre. That was an oil and water situation. The way it ended was just unbelievably awkward. It just didn't work out. And McElwain ends up going to Central Michigan after he left Florida. And I'll be honest with you, I found myself on Wednesday nights when I would stumble across Central Michigan playing Ball State and MAC action, rooting against Central Michigan just for the fact that Jim McElwain was the coach. McElwain, I was just not a big fan of. It didn't work out. Whereas Muschamp, I was hoping it worked out. It didn't, but I'm still a fan of the guy. And that brings me to Billy Napier. And my question to you, Gator fan, is There was a lot of weird things that Napier did. He didn't give up play calling. He made a fumble of a decision, at least one per game. He had 2 guys on the field with the same number, 10 guys on the field, and a key element in the fourth quarter. I mean, there was a lot of stuff. He was probably in over his head. But he gets instantly back in it at James Madison, a team, by the way, that was in the playoff last year. And I'm just wondering, and maybe I'm talking to myself as I'm doing this, is Billy Napier going to be more in the Will Muschamp category, where after a year or two goes by, Gator fan, you're going to be like, yeah, it didn't work out, but Billy's a jam-up dude. He tried, didn't work out, didn't materialize, was in over his head. I'm still probably going to pull for the guy. If you see James Madison on a Tuesday night in November and Billy Napier on the sideline, are you going to find yourself rooting for James Madison? Or are you going to be more of the Billy Napiers in the Jim McElwain category? More to heck with that guy. It didn't work out. He was a terrible play caller. He was arrogant. It could go both sides of the spectrum with Billy Napier when it comes to your thoughts on him. Will he be more the Will Muschamp? Will he be more the Jim McElwain? And maybe that's just me with Muschamp and McElwain. Hit me up on the text line designed by Lifetime Enclosures if you have a thought on this. 904-641-1010, 904-641-1010. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I found myself still rooting for Will after his time at Florida. I found myself rooting against McElwain after his time at Florida. Truthfully, Dan Mullen went to the TV studio, right? I really had no opinion on him one way or the other. He got back into it last year at UNLV, had a pretty decent season at UNLV, but I didn't have a passionate feeling on Mullen one way or the other. I had a passionate feeling on Muschamp for the positive, passionate feeling on McElwain for the negative. Mullen was just kind of there. And I believe that I am going to be more on the Will Muschamp side of things when it comes to Billy Napier. My question is, are you going to be more pro Billy Napier after enough time passes? Or are you going to be to heck with that guy like many of us are with McElwain after he left the University of Florida? Really the same question for Lagway, right? DJ Lagway came in as the Gatorade Player of the Year. You know, coming out of the state of Texas, all the passing records, everything was great. And you hate to throw the kid under the bus because there were injuries and probably some bad coaching, certainly, right? But Lagway is on the ballot for one of the all-time disappointments in Gator football, is he not? I mean, how many more guys came in with more acclaim than DJ Lagway, and how quickly that acclaim just absolutely blew up in everybody's face? I mean, is it Johnny Brantley levels? Maybe. Who was that wide receiver back in the early 90s? Steve Shipp. Remember Steve Shipp? That can't miss. I think it was a wide receiver. Brutally bad. Like, I don't know what my feeling is going to be on Lagway one way or the other. I don't know how much Baylor football I'm going to watch this year. I think, though, that if Lagway goes out there and he throws 40 touchdowns and 6 picks and leads Baylor to a 10-2 season and a dark horse run to the college football playoff, I get the sense that I, along with many of you, are going to be like, what on earth? What? I mean, is that going to be a problem we have with Lagway? Is that going to be a problem with Napier? Now, I don't expect that necessarily to happen, but can you imagine if that were to be the case? Lagway's a guy that I hope does well. I hope it works out for him. For whatever reason, it just did not work out well at Florida. And again, it's really a shame, too, because Napier and Lagway could have really had something. And it turns out you had nothing, right? You had a 5-star Gatorade Player of the Year quarterback that just fell on his face for whatever reason and is now out of the program. And we haven't even really talked about DJ Lagway's departure. We're so excited about, Aaron Philo and Tramel Jones that how often have we actually talked about the fact that DJ Lagway is no longer with the Gators? Really the same thing with Napier, right? He gets fired, And it's all now John Summerall this, John Summerall that, and with good reason. Again, my question to you, when you're stumbling across the channels in a couple of months and you come across James Madison and you see Billy Napier over there on the James Madison sideline, are you going to say, hope Billy does well, or are you going to passionately root for James Madison to fall on their face? Again, I was not rooting for Central Michigan when Jim McElwain was there. I happened to pull for South Carolina when they weren't paying Florida when Will Muschamp was a Gamecock. Where will Billy Napier fall? Into what tier will he fall with Gator Nation? Hit me up on the text line designed by Lifetime Enclosures, 904-641-1010. Nearing halftime, Hacker After Dark, 1 hour down, 1 hour to go. We'll take you up till 8 o'clock as we do every night right here on 1010XL and on 92.5 FM. Coming up next, a little NBA playoff talk. They're getting ready to tip things off in Orlando. 3 critical Game 6s tonight in the NBA playoffs. Ugh, being a sports fan. The age that being a sports fan puts on us. I got the sports nerves right now with my beloved Magic trying to close out Detroit tonight in Orlando. We'll talk about it next on Hacker After Dark.
We love winning, and 1010XL wants you to win our contests. We also like to share the winning. That's why we ask you to wait 30 days to win again so others get a chance to have the winning feeling. Find complete contest details at 1010XL.com.
Imagine this. You and your buddies outside enjoying the warm weather. The grill is fired up, steaks are sizzling, drinks in hand, and you're all hanging out around your brand new outdoor kitchen. CSS Fireplaces and Outdoor Living can make it happen. From custom outdoor kitchens to fireplaces, fire pits, and more. They bring your backyard dreams to life. You dream it, they build it. Visit CSSFireplaces.com and make your backyard the place everyone wants to be this season.
Rotator cuff injuries are common among athletes and those who have physically demanding careers. Don't let this injury keep you away from the sport you love. Dr. George Bari here, and the first thing you need to do with a serious shoulder injury is to diagnose where the damage is and how significant it is. Rotator cuff tears are either acute tears sustained during an injury or accident, or degenerative tears. If you're interested in learning more about rotator cuff repair and how our expert team of orthopedic surgeons can help you, call Bari Orthopedics today or visit bariorthopedics.com.
Big personalities, bold opinions, lunch just got louder. Josie, Matt, and Leon are XL Prime Time from the big #1 Duval Ford Studios.
Any questions? Yeah, when's lunch?
Noon to 2 on 1010XL.
Not everyone is built for a cubicle. At Local 234, apprentices get paid to learn hands-on skills like plumbing, pipe fitting, HVAC, the stuff Jacksonville runs on. No endless lectures, no massive student debt, just hands-on training, real jobs, and real pay. This is how you level up, by doing work that actually matters. Check them out at UA234.com. Proud partner of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Local 234. Make the right connection.
It's time to take your season to the next level when the Jaguars return to the bank in 2026. Become a season ticket member and unlock exclusive access to ticketed events, members-only experiences, NFL membership club perks, and more. Availability is limited due to in-bowl renovations, so don't wait. Call 904-633-2000 or visit jaguars.com/season tickets to secure your spot at the center of the action. We'll see you at the bank this fall.
I'm here with Danny Van Sickle, director of the Electrical Training Alliance. Danny, tell me about your program.
Hey, Rick, we're a 4-year electrical apprenticeship. Our students start out making over $40,000 a year and right now make over $90,000 a year, including benefits. There is no tuition or student debt. You just have to apply and get accepted.
Did you say no tuition and no student debt?
You heard that right, Rick. Once you're accepted to the program, your only cost are the books and the course fees. About $800 a year.
That sounds like an amazing opportunity. How can I learn more?
Just go to etajax.org and you can apply there.
Apply by May 14th.
Hi, this is Dale Murray with Murray Automotive Group in Stark and Kingsland. Save yourself from those big city dealers and their fast-talking mumbo-jumbo. No matter what your automotive need is, we've got you covered. Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and nobody beats our prices. I mean nobody. Shazam! Plus our exclusive 15-year, 150,000-mile warranty included on every qualified vehicle. And we'll trade anything from high heels to wagon wheels. Compare our prices online at ShazamAuto.com. Then come see me, Dale Murray. I'll be waiting for you. Shazam!
You know Zero Res. Hey, Hicken here. The Zero Residue carpet cleaner that leaves your carpets truly clean with no dirt-attracting soaps or harsh chemicals. Don't risk it with the other guys. And skip the DIY disasters that leave your carpets soaked for days. You can do more harm than good. Keep that mud outside where it belongs, not trapped in your carpets. This month, get 25% off all services. Hardwood, tile, LVP, carpets, air ducts, and more. Call 904-287-5727 or visit ZeroResJacksonville.com. Mention me or ask for the 1010XL special.
1010XL, presented by Farah and Farah, exclusive injury law firm of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Still, present, ready. Farah doesn't flinch. Hacker After Dark on 1010XL.
Yes, it is. In for Rick Ballou tonight till 8 o'clock on 1010XL and 92.5 FM. How good have these NBA playoffs been? You got 3 Game 6s tonight. We are less than 10 minutes away from Detroit and Orlando. Game 6 at the Kia Center in downtown Orlando, Florida. The Magic trying to close out the 1-seed Pistons again. An Orlando win would be the first time they will advance to the second round since 2010. A Detroit win would force a Game 7 in the Motor City on Sunday. You got Toronto-Cleveland, Game 6 tonight. Toronto needs to win to force a Game 7. And then you got the Lakers-Rockets, Game 6 tonight. The Lakers were up 3-0 in this series. The series was over. And then Houston has rattled off wins in Game 4 and Game 5. They are looking to win tonight to force a Game 7. Of course, as we all know, in the history of the NBA playoffs, no one has ever come back from 3-0 down. Well, Houston's halfway. They're down 3-2 with Game 6 this evening. We got a Game 7 coming up between the Celtics and the 76ers. That's crazy to me. Boston was up 3-1. They had destroyed Philly in Games 3 and Game 4. And all Philly's done is basically destroy Boston. Now in Game 5 and Game 6 to force a Game 7, you got a depleted Minnesota team without Anthony Edwards and Dante DiVincenzo and all these guys that have gotten hurt. And they just knocked off the Denver Nuggets. Denver's done. Minnesota moves on. They're going to take on San Antonio. Oklahoma City is awaiting the winner of the Rockets and the Lakers. It's been a fun first round of the NBA playoffs. Again, 3 Game 6s tonight. We'll see if any of those have to go to a Game 7. Like I said, we already have a Game 7 between the 76ers and Celtics this weekend. And quickly in the National Hockey League, Tampa Bay Lightning, they're trying to save their season tonight. They're down 3-2 in the series to Montreal. You got the Boston Bruins down 3-2 in their series to Buffalo. Both of those teams trying to force Game 7s. As I said a couple weeks ago, man, when the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs get cooking for about a month, every night you have compelling theater, compelling cinema in these 2 postseasons. It is really a great time of year in the sports world, and it should be a fun weekend beginning tonight and certainly Saturday and Sunday with both the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs. As we know, football is king. Jacksonville, Florida is no different. We're coming off the NFL draft. We're in the month of May, and we have OTAs later this month. We have rookie minicamp. We are 5 weeks away, basically. Yeah, 5 weeks away from mandatory veteran minicamp at the Miller Electric Center. Let's talk about the Jaguar draft with a guy that scouted every one of these players. Emory Hunt of Football Game Plan, CBS Sports HQ. I think Emory has the most comprehensive pre-draft guide out there. 1,500 scouting reports are what he put out prior to the draft. All 10 Jaguar draft picks, all 18 Jaguar undrafted free agents, all had scouting reports in the Football Game Plan pre-draft guide. We'll talk to Emory Hunt, the owner of Football Game Plan, about how he feels the Jaguars did. That's coming up next on a Friday night here in Jacksonville, Florida, with you till 8 o'clock, Jacksonville. We're glad you're with us right here on Hacker After Dark.
Your radio man cave.
Is there an echo in this room?
1010XL. Get geared up for your golf weekend with Dan, Jeff, and PGA pros on Brunch with the Tour.
Expect anything
anything different? Tuesday morning at 8:30. Teed up by North Florida Medical Centers and Clearwater Irrigation on 1010XL.
An accident with a big truck can change everything in a matter of seconds. Medical bills start piling up, you're missing work, and the trucking company's lawyers, they get to work immediately. That's why you need a law firm that moves just as fast. I'm Chris Campione, and at Campione Law, we fight for truck accident victims, digging into the details and holding negligent drivers and their trucking companies accountable. We don't get paid unless you do. Big trucks have big lawyers. You need a stronger fighter. Campione Law. Visit CampioneLaw.com. Offices, Jacksonville and St. Augustine.
Overheard at the Hard Rock Bet Party.
I just got another NBA offer from Hard Rock Bet.
A Hard Rock Bet promo at the Hard Rock Bet Party? That is so meta.
That's not meta. That's Meta World Peace. Meta. Tell them about Hard Rock Bet.
Hard Rock Bet has it all. Live odds for every NBA game, every player prop, same game parlays, you name it. It's the only place I play these days.
Okay, now that is meta.
Hard Rock Bet. Roll with us. Offered by the Seminole Tribe of Florida. Must be 21 plus and physically present in Florida to wager. Terms and conditions apply. Concerned about your gambling? Call or text 1-833-PLAY-WISE.
Home of the Jacksonville Jaguars. WJXL AM Jacksonville Beach. WJXL FM Jacksonville Beach.
Free Comic Book Day is going nuclear this Saturday, and Gotham City Limit is blowing up. Meet legendary artist Aaron Bartling, score massive sales, grab free comics, and soak in the good vibes of the hobby. Follow us on all socials and take Free Comic Book Day to the limit.
Credit card interest rates are now over 29%. Most people are only making the minimum payments, so they're getting nowhere. Hey, Prosser here, but here's what many homeowners don't realize. Using the equity in your home, you can easily access hundreds of thousands in cash. With Loan Pronto's Rapid Equity Loan, you can pay off your credit card, your existing HELOC, your car loans, or get money for that home improvement project. One client just got $100,000 approved and saved over $1,500 a month. Here's the best part. With Loan Pronto, you can do it all from your phone. With zero out-of-pocket, no hard credit pull up front, no appraisal, no long drawn-out bank process, and no touching your first mortgage. Rates are at a near 3-year low. Act now. Go to loanpronto.com. See how much you can get in about 60 seconds. Loan Pronto, 2,800 5-star Google reviews. Call 904-999-1508 or go to loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
The Jacksonville Waves tip-off opening night, May 15th at 7 p.m. in the brand new Upshot League at 5-Star Veterans Memorial Arena. Experience the excitement of women's professional basketball and be a part of history. Get your tickets now at wavesupshot.com.
1010XL, presented by Farah and Farah, exclusive injury law firm of the Jacksonville Jaguars. When it's game time, Farah doesn't flinch. Here's another call on the 1010XL hotline, driven by Key Buick GMC, home of the lifetime powertrain warranty.
Back here on 1010XL at 92.5 FM in the city of Jacksonville. We are glad you are with us. The NFL draft is in the rearview mirror. Obviously, the Jaguars have been the topic of a lot of conversation when it comes to draft analysts around the country, some of the things they did, the consensus boards. I never even heard that term up until a couple of days ago, but that's been the common terminology, that the Jaguars went against the consensus boards. Let's talk to a man that's done this for a long time. He is the owner of Football Game Plan. He has one of the most comprehensive pre-draft guides out there, and he does a great job covering the NFL draft for Football Game Plan. You also see him at CBS Sports HQ. That is Emory Hunt, and Emory's always kind enough to join us here on 1010XL. Emory, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, man. I appreciate you bringing me on.
Hey, Emory, thank you for the time as always. All right, consensus boards. That's been the common thought, that the Jaguars went against the grain for what a lot of people thought coming into this draft. First and foremost, your thoughts overall on, quite frankly, Emory, I guess the national negativity when it comes to what the Jaguars did in Pittsburgh.
You know what's interesting about that conversation, Ryan, is the fact that when you look at the draft, I've always viewed this as a talent acquisition process. Which essentially it is. Now, if we're talking about a team that won double-digit games, went to the postseason, there are not a lot of holes on this roster. So they came into the draft probably drafting for depth more so than anything, and guys that have a pathway to potentially start down the line. So for them, it's like, hey, we don't have a first-round pick. we're picking lower in the second round or lower in the draft. We could draft for depth. We could draft for guys that we feel like can help us out in situational moments. So if people look at it from that lens, then you can see why they went with certain players. Now, certain players, whether you have a higher grade on a guy or not, that's neither here nor there. But I understand the logic because no first round pick, very good start in 22 in a situation where they felt like they can go get guys that fit their scheme. And that's how you're supposed to attack a draft, in my opinion. Get guys that fit your scheme, regardless of what everybody else around you think. That's both media and other teams. And you got to go out there and play ball. If they feel like they got guys that can play within their scheme, that they can win games with, then I'm all for it.
Emory, we had you on in the pre-draft process. We talked about your draft guide, and it was massive. I mean, you studied a ton of these guys, and like I said, I think it's the most comprehensive pre-draft guide out there every single year at Football Game Plan. Let's start diving into some of the Jaguar picks. First and foremost, at 56, the guy that got a lot of the, I guess, venom for what the Jaguars did was Nate Borkesher, the tight end from Texas A&M. Some people had him in the 130s, I guess. What was your overall thought on Jacksonville drafting Borkesher?
I think he's a good blocker, good inline player. He was my number 6 inline tight end. I think in the short to intermediate passing game, he's solid, on in-breaking routes. I think he's utilized in the red zone. So, he does all those inline blocking things rather well. I feel like he sort of meets expectations as a route runner. Nothing overly spectacular or dynamic, which is fine. But, he's not what people fall in love with the tight end position. Like, he's not going to be your, Kyle Pitts or one of those type guys. I think what happens is he's going to be a 25-year-old rookie. And we've seen this also be a theme here with them in terms of the age of some of these players, whether you talk about Borkesher or even their 7th round pick in Zach Duffrey. So, guy that's 25, how much upside? I think that's mostly where the issues came with the Borkesher pick is because of him being 25 years old without any wowing traits, and you took him in the 2nd round. I think that's why we've seen the head scratching coming from a lot of people around the landscape.
Emory Hunt is the owner of Football Game Plan. You also see him at CBS Sports HQ, and he's with us here on 1010XL in Jacksonville. They doubled up at tight end, Emory, not only Borkesher in round 2, Tanner Koziel in round 5 out of Houston. And the interesting thing about Tanner is he's almost the exact opposite. What Borkesher gives you in the blocking game, Koziel will not. But Koziel catches everything. I think he had like 75 catches or something ridiculous last year. Plus, he's a 6'7", 255-pound target. What did you make of the Jaguars doubling up at the tight end position?
It shows you what the mindset is. So you got an inline guy, you got a H-back type, and to go pair up with Brenton Strange, who's already on the roster. I think is a very good player in his own right. So you kind of got like the holy trinity of the tight end position. That's how I graded inline, flex, and H-back. So I could see the vision. And you're right about his catching ability. He has like a large catch radius, and a lot of his catches were contested, because he doesn't separate. He's not overly explosive or anything like that. And I feel like when you're asking the block, got to get better knee bend. But I mean, that's kind of going to be the issue for a guy that's 6'6", 6'7". But in terms of catching the football, red zone target, keep in mind what we're seeing here for the first 2 tight ends. Like, we're talking about guys that are very good in the red zone, underutilized in the red zone. So you can see the mindset of why they went with these 2 players.
I almost think, in talking to people briefly after the draft, Emory, that people had maybe more of a problem with Albert Regis at 81 than they even did with Borkesher at 56. What was your thought on the other Texas A&M Aggie that came to Jacksonville?
Well, again, it's funny that I'm seeing the common grade I have on these guys, kind of, I hate to use the word backups, but sort of starters in waiting. I'll use it that way. He's squatty, which I like because he gets underneath the pass really well. He's able to quickly slant inside, attack a half a man, and really lean with leverage. So he's able to supersede those short arms. And because he has short arms, he's like how we talked about Ruben Bain pre-draft. He's able to win the hands first battle, which is essential for guys that don't have the long arms. He's a good hustle player that can pursue the ball down the line. I think what happens is, he finds himself getting overwhelmed by double teams, and he's going to have to refine his technique in that regard. But if we're talking about a guy that's a reserve sub-package player that could be a one-gap penetrator or a classic 3 technique, then I can see him fitting a role. So, again, looking at it from the scope of frontline starters on both offense and defense are strong and solid. They went in attacking depth, and you have to do it that way when you don't have that first-round pick.
I think conventional thinking on the Jaguars draft is Pregnon, the offensive guard out of Oregon, was a steal at 88, Emory. In your opinion, why did he fall to 88? Because I know a lot of people had a round 2 grade on him, and how do you feel he'll fit in here in Jacksonville?
Well, that was the one that I was shocked because when I think about him as a prospect, as a guard, he was my number 2 guard in the class. And I was like, whoa, excellent in the run game. This is, imagine if they picked him in the first round, if they had a first round pick and they picked Pregnon, everything else would have fell into place. So a lot of times you got to rearrange the deck chairs to get people to see it clearly. I said this last year with the Browns pick. Had you flopped or flipped Shedeur Sanders with, Carson Schlesinger or whatnot, no one would have had an issue. And I think that's how you look at this class. Because, again, you talk about somebody that's, I don't know why he dropped. Maybe that's something behind the scene or whatnot. But this is an excellent guard. I think this guy is going to be one of those players that we can see start sooner rather than later.
Couple of more for Emory Hunt, the owner of Football Game Plan. Jalen Husky from Maryland. I don't know a lot about him, Emory, other than the football seems to find him. 11 career interceptions. I know he's got some capability as a corner and a safety. It's kind of similar to what they have with Caleb Ransaw, we think, and maybe even a little bit Antonio Johnson. The Jaguars seem to like the flexibility of a corner/safety. What kind of player is Husky out of Maryland?
He was my number 5 free safety in the class. So he's got very good discipline on the back end. He could stay on that hash or in his deep third longer than most before declaring the side. He's able to square up, make tackles. His eyes are always in the right place. It's how he always finds the football. And on top of the fact that he takes great angles to the football. Now, he can be a half-tick late in changing those directions, and it shows up when he's guarding one-on-one at the receiver and has to really open up his hips and then drive to leverage the route. That's something he's going to have to be a little bit better at. That's why he's probably moving to safety as opposed to corner. But he's 6'1", 196, had a very good week at the East-West Shrine Bowl. I thought this was a solid pick where they got him.
I want to ask you about a couple of the guys on Saturday, but I think the guy on Saturday that's getting the most talk, at least down here, is the young man from Baylor. Is it Josh Cameron, the wide receiver? It certainly feels that the Jaguars might have found one there. Excellent in the return game. He's a big, physical wide receiver. What is your thought on Cameron?
He was my number 8 inside wide receiver. So, kind of that cross between a slot and an X. I'm a big fan of his footwork and his cutting ability, and that's evidence of him being an outstanding punt returner. So if you return punts, it tells me all you need to know about your footwork and your ability to probably get in and out of your breaks as a route runner. Has that short area burst that shows up, and that's why he's a big chunk playmaker, and he's physical too. He's 6'1", 223. I thought this was somebody that, when you think about core special teamers that have a pathway to really play within the rotation of wide receivers, you could give him a handoff, you could throw him a short pass and allow his return skills to really take flight. Now, he's not the most natural hands catcher. A lot of times he'll double clutch some passes, but for the most part, because he's a core special teamer, because he's explosive, because he does have that physicality, you can see them finding a situational role for him within the offense.
Emory, they drafted 6 guys on Saturday, and the first of those 6 they actually traded up for, and that's Wesley Williams out of Duke. I'll be honest, in the days since the draft, we've talked so much about a lot of the other guys. I really haven't talked about Wesley Williams out of Duke. What was your thought on him?
I have a higher grade on him than I do on Durfee out of Washington. Wesley Williams was my number 15 edge rusher. Above average change direction skills. He could stop, start, track, and retrace rather well. He got the fluid hips to bend and accelerate on a quarterback. And when he's rushing from, a 7-tech or a 9 technique, you can see that, manifest itself. And I think the fluidity to drop back in the short zone coverage also yields itself well. He's a good pursuit player, can chase the run going away. He'll end up making a lot of plays in the run game that's coming at him, as well as pressuring the quarterback. So he does a lot of things rather well. I thought he was one of the more underrated, defensive ends, edge rushers in the class, and was shocked to see him go this late in the draft.
As we begin to wrap up, Emory, the 7th round picks, you mentioned Durfee a little bit out of Washington. I think people are intrigued by what he could potentially become. And then I didn't know anything about Parker Hughes, so I'll plead ignorance on this. But in talking to people about him, apparently there were a lot of teams, I was told, that prioritized him in round 7 because there was going to be a bidding war for him in undrafted free agency, basically because how many linebackers that you see can run 4.4 40-yard dashes. Any thought on either Durfee or Hughes?
Well, for Hughes, I was at the College Gridiron Showcase, and he was one of the standouts there. He's an assertive player in all aspects of the game. You can tell he played a lot of football in his career, so he's never surprised or caught out of position. So he's a disciplined player in that regard. He's an above-average tackler, good lateral quickness and agility. And when you think about Middle Tennessee, they've produced a lot of good football players on defense in the last 3 draft classes. So this is something that I'm not shocked to see. I just like to see him get a little bit more consistent in taking on blockers in the hole. But as a weak side linebacker, he won't have to do that as much. I will say this, though, to add to the draft class, because the Jags announced some of their undrafted free agents, Ben Patterson of UT Permian Basin, phenomenal receiver. That's a sleeper right there to keep an eye on. Trevor is a very tough, physical, workman-like effort type guy. Jim Obidegwu, phenomenal offensive lineman out of North Texas. That's one to keep an eye on. Jamari Taylor, I covered a lot of his games when he was at North Carolina Central. I'm a big fan of what he does in running the football. Preston Hodge out of Colorado. So when you kind of look at all of this, the Jags actually did a very fine job in acquiring talent, in my opinion.
Emory, as we begin to wrap up, again, Emory Hunt, the owner of Football Game Plan. You also see him on CBS Sports HQ. You're one of the guys in the draft industry. That's why we have you on every year. And not to put words in your mouth, but in talking to you for the last 15 minutes, you seem to be a little higher on what the Jaguars did than maybe some of your colleagues.
I guess because I'm a positive person by nature, and because I grade over 1,200 prospects a year, and also go to all 9 All-Star games. I've seen these guys. So when people, get negative about certain prospects, I wonder how much have they watched or seen them. Now, outside of the top 60, most draft analysts in the media are out of their element. You know what I'm saying? So when they see someone, like a Wesley Williams, like, well, who the heck is that? Or they see someone like a Parker Hughes, I know for a fact they wasn't there at the College Gridiron Showcase, so they have no clue who that is. And all the undrafted rookie free agents that I brought up is like, they really poo-poo on these players. But, man, you see all of these guys. Like, again, Garrett DiGiorgio may end up getting drafted tonight in the CFL draft. So that's something else that people are sleeping on. So, for me, I just always see the big picture. And there's a lot of good football players. And when it's week 9 and one of these guys, like Regis has 3.5 TFLs in the game, nobody's going to care that they took him in the 3rd round.
Again, that's why Football Game Plan is the most comprehensive, in my opinion, pre-draft NFL guide out there on a yearly basis. Emory Hunt is the owner of Football Game Plan. Emory, what is the game plan for you now over there at Football Game Plan? Are you recapping 2026, or have you guys already moved on to 2027?
Recapping 2026, we got the CFL draft tonight, and we're going to take a look at the 2027 class starting next week when I, perhaps head up to the to Canada for their All-Star game, the East-West Bowl, which takes place before the season. So that's the turning page to 2027. But right now we got CFL draft, we got UFL coverage that we're still doing, and we're recapping the 2026 NFL draft as well. So they can still go get that draft guide, because it's very useful, not only for the draft, but for preseason football as well. FootballGamePlan.com/2026 draft guide.
It is absolutely phenomenal. And, of course, you also see Emory on CBS Sports HQ. Emory, I know how busy you are. Thank you for taking time out for us in Jacksonville, and we'll talk soon, pal.
Appreciate you, Ryan. Always a pleasure.
Back here on 1010XL at 92.
In times of old, the world was full of wonder and magic. But times change.
Get your wonder and magic on 1010XL.
This is Mark Nato. My son Justin injured his hand playing baseball for JU. Southeast Orthopedic Specialist performed surgery just a few days later, and within 5 weeks, he was cleared to play in the ASUN baseball tournament. Our family has trusted Southeast Orthopedic Specialist for years. For any orthopedic injury, let Southeast Orthopedic Specialist take care of you too.
Relieve pain and get back to life. Southeast Orthopedic Specialists.
Hey, Hicken here. I want to tell you guys about Lift Power. Lift Power, a Jacksonville-based business, been around for more than 50 years, family-owned and operated, and always on the lookout for good folks, experienced lift truck and dock and door technicians. The benefits out of this world: 401k, company vehicle, paid training, sign-on bonus. Offered so great. Come see why Lift Power has been voted one of the best places to work for the past several years as well. We want you to be a part of the family. Don't let this opportunity slip by. To learn more, all you got to do is go to liftpower.com. Check them out at liftpower.com.
Bueller, stay cooler with Bueller.
Hey, pal, what's the matter? I came right over.
It's my water, Jason. Smell this.
Yeesh.
That came out of my tap, Jason. I'm worried there's a lot more in there than just H2 and O.
Well, yeah. In Jacksonville, we have some of the hardest water in Florida. There's calcium carbonate in there and magnesium sulfate and...
I'm sorry, calcium... what now?
It's the same stuff that makes those cool stalactites in caves.
Well, it's making my shower all powdery, my tap's all crusty, and caves make me claustrophobic.
Put on these sunglasses.
Whoa.
Call Bueller Air and Plumbing, and our water treatment experts will do a free water quality test. We'll check for minerals, bacteria, anything that might make your water smelly or damage your plumbing or appliances.
And if it's bad, you can fix it?
Your glasses will come out cleaner, your shampoo will lather better.
I like a good lather, Jason.
Stay cooler with Bueller.
Visit BuellerAir.com.
1010XL, presented by Farah and Farah, exclusive injury law firm of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Focused, fueled, fearless, Farah. Now, the Monahan's golden moment. Monahan Jewelers in Atlantic Beach, your local family jewelers.
Yeah, the golden moment was talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars in relation to the rest of the AFC South, right? As much as happened here, you look at Tennessee and all the free agents they've brought in. Indianapolis re-signing Alec Pierce and Daniel Jones to huge contracts, but losing Braden Smith and Zaire Franklin and Michael Pittman Jr., among other things. And then Houston brings in a David Montgomery, brings in a Wyatt Teller. They've obviously lost some pieces as well. You add all that up, how does the AFC South look coming into 2026? Well, we'll see. I still think Jacksonville and Houston are at the top of the division. I think Tennessee is improved. I hate what Indianapolis has done. We'll see once we get into training camp and get more of an idea what these teams look like. But as we enter the month of May, I still feel it's going to be a battle at the top between the Texans and the Jaguars again here in 2026. More on the Jacksonville Jaguars coming up. AJ Schulte, A2ZSports.com. I had AJ on in the pre-draft process. We previewed what Jacksonville was going to do. Now that we know what Jacksonville ultimately did, let's review what the Jaguars did in the draft and how that's going to shape their 2026 roster. On a Friday evening here in Northeast Florida, a little Hacker After Dark, Before Dark, in for Rick Ballou till 8 o'clock. Jacksonville, we're glad you're with us here on 1010XL and 92.5 FM.
Every tackle, basket, and crack of the bat. Your radio home for play-by-play is 1010XL.
Mike Dempsey here for big #1 Duval Ford. Hundreds will gather to walk for those living with ALS at the Walk to Defeat ALS Jacksonville, Saturday, May 2nd, 10 a.m. at Friendship Fountain. Register or donate at als.org/walkjacksonville.
Hicken here. See clearly with the Eye Associates and trusted optometrists Zachary Boskool and Alice LaFlamme. From comprehensive eye exams, dry eye care, glaucoma management, diabetic eye care, and more, Dr. Boskool and Dr. LaFlamme are dedicated to protecting your vision. Immediate availability at all 5 Jacksonville locations. Schedule today with Dr. Boskool and Dr. LaFlamme by calling the Eye Associates, formerly Bowden Associates, Schneider Eye and Wellness Center, and Janet Betchkel, MD, at 296-0098.
Looking for an exciting, fun-filled evening your whole group can enjoy? Discover the thrill of indoor football. Fast-paced, action-packed, and full of family fun. Be there as your Sharks take on the New Mexico Chupacabras Saturday, May 2nd at the VyStar Veterans Memorial Arena. Kickoff, 7 o'clock. Don't miss the action-packed halftime performance by Showtime USA. Ask about our family 4-packs. 4 tickets and $50 in food vouchers, all for only $100. To purchase tickets, go to jacksharks.com or call 904-621-0700. That's 904-621-0700. It's Education Appreciation Night, presented by the University of North Florida. All teachers, administrators, and school staff get our special buy one, get one free ticket deal. Join us on the field after the game for our free autograph session, sponsored by Flight Adventure Park. Tickets start at just $15. Get yours today at 621-0700. That's 621-0700. Sharks football, where memories are made.
Go Sharks!
There's no better way to heal that foot and mouth problem than by sending a floral arrangement from Kuhn Flowers. If your foot gets stuck in your mouth, extract it with a floral arrangement from Kuhn Flowers for over 75 years.
Checkmate. I'm Brendan Cecilia from Checkmate Coatings.
And I'm Chester, his adorable chessman sidekick.
There are 2 things you want to ask when getting a custom polymer garage floor coating. Will it be done right, and will it be priced right?
And just how charming is their mascot?
No. At Checkmate, our small specialized install teams follow a strict 29-point installation checklist
to ensure the highest quality results at a price you can afford.
A Checkmate polyaspartic floor can be customized in dozens of colors and sweeps up sparkling clean in just seconds.
No need to wear your shoes in the garage to avoid tracking dirt back into the house.
The quality you expect?
Check. A price that might surprise you.
Check. A floor you just can't wait to show your friends? Checkmate!
Transforming your floors, making them great. Checkmate.
Visit CheckmateCoatings.com. That's CheckmateCoatings.com.
1010XL, presented by Farah and Farah, exclusive injury law firm of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Still present, ready. Farah doesn't flinch. Here's another call on the 1010XL hotline, driven by Key Buick GMC, home of the lifetime powertrain warranty.
Back here on 1010XL and 92.5 FM in the city of Jacksonville, your home for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we are glad you are with us. The draft in the rearview mirror. Obviously, the Jaguars were a topic of conversation coming out of the draft. There were some people that, well, didn't think too highly of what they did. There were some others that thought maybe they found some diamonds in the rough. Let's talk about it and how some of their picks will affect the 2026 roster. AJ Schulte, A to Z Sports.com, always kind enough to join us here on 1010XL in Jacksonville. AJ, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. It's been a busy week with the draft and everything, kind of post-draft reaction stuff, but I'm doing well. I'm feeling great, and I'm excited to keep this offseason going and to get into next year's draft here soon.
AJ, what about the whole consensus board conversation? It seems like, as far as Jacksonville goes, there are some people that quite frankly, are almost angry at what the Jaguars did. It's really interesting. From your perspective as a guy that follows the draft and has done so for many years, what's your thought on Jacksonville's draft class?
I'll do the consensus board take first, and then I'll get into the Jags draft as a whole. I think consensus board is a valuable tool. I think it's kind of like every other data point that you will bring into the picture. It's, I think, good to have on hand. I think it's good to have to reference. I don't think it would dictate my board necessarily. I do believe that there is a sort of wisdom of the crowd to it. And so, I think if you want to say, hey, maybe we can get this guy later, maybe we should entertain a trade down, I think that's a perfectly valid process to have. But if you're at the same time saying, hey, I don't think this guy will make it based on what we know versus what the consensus crowd knows, then I don't think it should necessarily completely dictate your board. I think there are a lot of people who just kind of throw it away, which I think is unreasonable to an extent. But I also think that there are sometimes people who adhere too much to it, where like there's no analysis on a pick other than he was taken 40 spots before consensus. And I think that's lazy analysis, to tell you the truth. And so I think it's I'm kind of in the middle with it. I do think it's very useful to consider, but specifically this draft, and I'll start to get into the Jags draft here, where it felt like nobody really knew what would happen after the first 40 or 50 picks. And so teams are much more privy to that than we are as media. And it really just kind of turned into a pick your flavor at times with a lot of this class. I think the most controversial example of that was Nate Boerkircher to start the draft, right? That was the immediate reaction, was he was taken, like 100 spots over consensus, if I'm remembering that right. But I've heard through the grapevine pretty well regularly after that he would have been taken in the next 10 to 15 picks easily. And I think the tight end run that followed after that kind of backs that up. So I don't think you can necessarily strictly adhere to what the consensus board says if you internally are saying, hey, we really like this guy, and we know for a fact he will not be available when we pick next.
AJ Schulte, A to Z Sports.com. AJ, you're the third draft guy I've talked to this week that has told me that Nate Boerkircher was going to probably be gone before the Jaguars were back up at pick 81. That seems to be a thought that is growing in the days since the draft. Let's talk about Boerkircher first and foremost. What were your thoughts on him heading into the draft?
I was a huge fan of him. I covered A&M part of the way for A to Z Sports, and I really felt like he was an underutilized part of that offense. Obviously, as a blocker, tremendous amount of ability, but he never really got to show his ability as a receiver simply due to the nature of A&M's offense. Everything ran through Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver, and then when it didn't, and the tight end is kind of like the third read in the system sometimes. Marcel Reed just wasn't really like that mentally for a lot of the season. And when Boerkircher did get that opportunity downfield, the ball either wasn't really finding him accurately or just wasn't getting to him at all. So I think once he got to the Senior Bowl, you saw that downfield ability really start to show up. He really popped off in drills in Mobile. I think you look at his game, I thought he was the best blocking tight end in the NFL, or in the NFL draft, excuse me. And so when you have that kind of upside as a blocker, and I think there's a lot of untapped potential as a receiver, even though he is on the older side as a prospect, I think that there's that upside to his game because we haven't really seen it yet, but it's there. The traits are evident on his film that he can be that. And for the Jaguars, who kind of want to follow the mold of more 12 and 13 personnel, I think he can right away improve the run blocking, which is, I think, a big part of what Jacksonville wanted to do. I think they spoke after the draft about getting more physical, about being tougher at the point of attack, because I think that was part of their issues on both sides of the ball in the playoffs, particularly. But Boerkircher also has the upside to threaten defenses down the seam. I think he can make contested catches over linebackers. So I think there's more to his game than he's just strictly a blocking tight end. I think that's unfair to him and an unfair thing to his game, because I think he can do a lot more than that.
AJ Schulte of A to Z Sports. Not only did they take Boerkircher, they also doubled up at tight end with Tanner Koziel out of Houston. He looks like he catches everything, and he's a big dude at 6'7". What were your thoughts on Koziel in the pre-draft process?
What I like about how the Jags attacked the tight end room with Boerkircher and Koziel is that there were clearly defined roles, right? Boerkircher and Brenton Strange, and even to an extent Quentin Morris, are all kind of like, they can play in line. They can do a lot of the traditional tight end stuff. Koziel, I think, is more, here's your move tight end. Here's your detached, big slot kind of wide receiver. I think he can be a mismatched player in the slot, and the Jags didn't really have that kind of guy. I love his ability in the red zone. I think that's a huge area of need that the Jaguars needed to improve. And so I like that they stacked Boerkircher with Koziel, just because you have that multiple role personnel, and now you can have Koziel line up. You can simulate like a 12 or 13 personnel with Koziel lined up as a wide receiver in lieu of an actual wide receiver. And so I think there's a lot of mismatch ability to the way that they've attacked that position now here in the offseason.
The thought, AJ, is that the Jaguars' best value was Emmanuel Pregnon from Oregon. A lot of people had a round 2 grade on the offensive guard from Oregon. They get him at number 88. My question to you is, did you have a round 2 grade on him? And if so, why did he fall to 88?
I don't necessarily know why he fell. I think this draft, there was a lot of emphasis on premium positions early, and unfortunately guard is just not really one of them. Like I think we saw a similar fall at safety as well this year, where it was just like Caleb Downs went early and then the rest of the class kind of stacked well below we all thought they would go. And Pregnon, I came in, I was extraordinarily high on him. He was top 50 on my board because I saw a lot of similarities to Kevin Dotson, the right guard for the Rams, who I thought was arguably the best right guard in football last year. I think Pregnon could start. Like, if they want him to, I think he has the ability to start right away. You look at his just overwhelming power. I think he's so stout in pass protection and in the run game. His mentality, he's just constantly finishing through the reps, aiming through, just bringing guys to the turf constantly. I love his strike timing as a pass protector. I think he can really do a lot right away to improve them on the interior, especially with the league starting to value that interior pressure. And in the AFC, there are a ton of those guys, right? You've got to go up against Milton Williams and Chris Jones every time you make it into the playoffs. And so for Jacksonville, like I talked about earlier, you're getting tougher. That was a very obvious thing to me with Pregnon, Albert Regis, and Borkircher, was they wanted to get more physically stronger, and I think they're doing that.
You mentioned Regis. You covered A&M, so you're very familiar with him. In the interior, they also got Wesley Williams and Zach Durfee on the edge. Williams a 4th rounder, Durfee a 7th rounder. Anything about Williams, Durfee, or Regis to stand out to you?
I think Regis can kind of come in and do a lot to spell Hamilton. I think early on, I think he could probably be the backup nose tackle for them. He's very stout at the point of attack. He's a great tackler. I think he has a lot of range as a tackler and a run defender up there. He is such a high character dude. I spoke with Regis at the Shrine Bowl before the draft, and he was probably my favorite interview just in terms of his personality. He really seemed like a genuine, like, hardworking character who loved his family, just all of the intangible things that you want. And then you watch his film, and he's just holding up double teams. He's making plays in the run game. I think there's a little bit of untapped ability as a pass rusher, but I think primarily he will be the spell for Hamilton. And again, just kind of increase and improve their trench depth, which is kind of a big deal, I think, for Jacksonville moving forward. You have pieces, now you need quality depth. Wesley Williams, I think, can do a lot to kind of spell Walker and Josh Hines-Allen for obvious passing downs. I think they have a lot of snaps to replace out of that room. And Williams is such a gifted, I think, run defender up front. I know that's not going to excite the most people when you just say it, edge rusher is a run defender, but I think that's such a helpful thing to have. James Gladstone talked about his ability to disrupt both the run and pass after, which is why they made him such a coveted piece of their draft class, because he can do so much. You don't have to take him off the field on any down. So I think you have a little bit more multiplicity in that room. You can have guys who can keep Hines-Allen and Walker fresh. And I think the same applies with Durfee, where if he had stayed healthy, I feel like there was a lot of upside for him to go maybe a lot earlier than this. But I think he's probably more of like a designated pass rusher, and he has a tremendous amount of athleticism. I think there's a lot of untapped potential because of the injuries. And so there in the 7th round, I think that's totally worth the swing.
AJ, as we begin to wrap up, they took 2 tight ends. They also took 2 wide receivers, C.J. Williams from Stanford and Josh Cameron from Baylor. I think Cameron's probably getting more acclaim. They were drafted only 12 spots apart. You got a quick thought on either Cameron or Williams?
Cameron was one of my favorite wide receivers in the draft. I'm so glad you asked me because I got to his tape kind of late in the process, and I totally fell for him. I think he could he's a strong perimeter threat wide receiver. I loved what he did during the catch process. I thought he was tremendous in contested situations, great size. I think he's really tough to bring down in the open field. And so you have that yards after the catch ability, that physicality. But then I think where he's most valuable is as a blocker. I thought he was one of the best in this draft class. I think you can do a lot with him. And I think Jacksonville kind of enjoys that with Parker Washington. Now here's another guy who can do similar things. And Cameron is a tremendous kick returner as well. He's super experienced. And so you add that special teams background. You know, I think they had tried to add Jake Bobo earlier on. And I think Cameron has a lot more upside, but is a similar role projection for Bobo. And so I think adding him there is a really strong swing. I think he can be the wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, just because of what he brings as a back shoulder specialist, red zone threat, possession mover, blocker, all of that. CJ Williams was kind of a interesting dart throw, I think, just because nobody really had talked about him. But I think given the state of the room and the fact that I liked Cameron a little more, I feel like Williams is going to have to earn his spot on special teams.
As we say goodbye, you throw in Jalen Husky and Peyton Hughes, the other 2 guys we didn't talk about in the 10-person draft class. Talking to you for the last couple of minutes, it seems like you're probably higher on this draft class than maybe some of your colleagues nationally.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it was the consensus discussion has kind of weighed on a lot of people's minds. And I have been a fan of Gladstone for a while, and so I'm willing to give him kind of the benefit of the doubt when it comes to these things. Because when you looked at what they did last year and then this year, there's, at least to me, there's a clear vision in mind. And I think with Jalen Husky, they had ran a lot of the 3 high safety looks last year. And so, they do have a lot of depth at that position that they kind of have to sort through. But I think there's a lot of upside to Husky, and they've talked about his ability as a special teamer. So I think that's going to be early on for him as well, kind of that role, and then competing for snaps as the safety 3. And the same thing with Hughes. I mean, talk about an upside swing. His athleticism, his testing numbers are tremendous for his position. And so, I think that's a really interesting dart throw there at the end of the 7th round. I know a lot of people would probably say, he should have been an undrafted free agent, but if you didn't think you were going to get him with pick 248 or 248, whichever one it was, I think I'm okay taking that kind of a swing. We'll see if he can beat out Branson Coombs for that last spot, but I think he has a lot of special teams upside. And again, the special teams is kind of an emphasis. I've talked about that a lot, but that's really the moneymaker. And I think Gladstone is kind of learning the lessons of who he worked under in Los Angeles with Les Snead, because the Rams special teams has been a problem for a while, and it cost them a Super Bowl. I doubt James Gladstone wants to experience the same thing.
AJ, tell the good folks here in Jacksonville, A2ZSports.com, and the coverage you guys have coming out of the 2026 draft.
Yeah, so we have a fully automated mock draft simulator now for 2027. So you can go ahead and get started. We have hundreds of players on the database, and we're getting ready to drop a whole bunch of blurbs on the 2027 prospects. So for draft coverage, we're getting into next year. You can also find my work at A2Z Sports. I cover the Patriots, the Rams, NFL, and I also cover the Oklahoma Sooners, Texas A&M Aggies, and Michigan Wolverines. So we're doing a lot. We're excited to get into next year. We launched the mock draft simulator about April, and next year we're kind of aiming for it to be even better.
AJ Schulte, A to Z Sports.com. AJ, I know you're busy, man. Thank you as always for the time, and we'll do it again soon, pal.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate you having me on.
And thank you to AJ Schulte, A to Z Sports.com, for joining us tonight here on Hacker After Dark to recap the Jaguar draft class. That's been a big conversation all week long, what the Jaguars did in the draft. There was a lot of talk about it, certainly locally, regionally, and nationally. Look, as we've talked about all week, and quite frankly, the conversation will continue, you can't really judge any draft class until, golly, minimum 2 years, probably more along the lines of 3. Now, having said that, we're obviously going to talk about what the Jaguars did. And if you hate the draft class, well, there's nothing that's going to change your mind until games start being played in September. If you're okay with the draft class, likewise, nothing will change your mind until the games start being played in September. So there's not going to be a lot of mind changing going on, but it's just interesting how some people were so, in my opinion at least, so over the top about what Jacksonville did. Look, I think it speaks volumes to where the roster is. You drafted 10 guys. Now, granted, you didn't have a first-round pick, and that goes into this, but you drafted 10 guys, and 10's a big number. That's a lot of draft picks. And of the 10 guys you drafted, on paper, barring injury, not one of them is going to be relied on to be a starter for you. Again, that speaks volumes to already how good the Jaguar roster is. Have you replaced ETN? Well, we'll see. They got Bashal Tune, they got LaQuint Allen Jr., Chris Rodriguez. We'll see what ultimately happens there. Have you replaced Devin Lloyd? That's probably a bigger question, right, with Ventrell Miller and Branson Combs, and we'll see if they add anybody in free agency. That's what they did last year, if you'll remember. After the draft, was it Dennis Gardeck, DeJuan Smoot, Austin Johnson, Emmanuel Agba? They added 4 defensive veterans post-draft. They've yet to do anything like that yet. We'll see if that ultimately does materialize here in the next couple of weeks or so, because OTAs, on-field activities for the Jaguars, begin in 3 weeks. Minicamp is next month, and now we are inside of 90 days until Jaguar training camp, which obviously gets underway down at the Miller Electric Center at the early, or I guess the middle to late portions of July. Well, that will just about do it, man. Very, very busy Friday night edition of Hacker After Dark. We certainly appreciate you guys hanging out with us here on 1010XL and on 92.5 FM, and we have a ton of people to thank. Again, AJ Schulte, A to Z Sports.com. Always appreciate AJ taking time out for us. Likewise, Emory Hunt, the owner of Football Game Plan. You also see him at CBS Sports HQ. Emory does that pre-draft guide every year. He's done it for about, he's owned Football Game Plan for over 2 decades. The draft guide's more recent, since about 2020 or so. 1,500 prospects they scouted, including every one of the Jaguar draft picks and undrafted free agents. If you want more information about the guys the Jaguars drafted, look into the Football Game Plan draft guide. And then back in hour number 1, my buddy Steve Palazzolo, the Check the Mic podcast. Always appreciate Steve joining us here on Hacker After Dark in Jacksonville. Now, next week will be a little different. We will be 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock like what we are tonight on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I'll also be alongside Frank Frangie on The Frangie Show from 4 until 6. So 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for both The Frangie Show and Hacker After Dark, and we do hope that you join us then. Aaron Williams was your producer tonight. Aaron, great job as always. I'm the hacker, Ryan Green. And again, Jacksonville, thank you for not only spending your Friday evening with us, but your entire week with us here on Hacker After Dark. As we always tell you, and we cannot possibly tell you enough how much we absolutely appreciate it. So for all of us here on HAD, have a terrific remainder of your Friday evening and a fantastic weekend. And we will talk to you on Monday, both beginning at 6 o'clock right here on Hacker After Dark, and sitting in alongside Frank Frangie beginning at 4 o'clock here on 1010XL and 92.5 FM. Until then, good night, Jacksonville.
Hello, First Coast. I'm sure by now you have seen our bright green GFL truck